It's taken 2 years, but I have finally done it. Friends, we have found the antidote. We have found the cure to the straight girl's guide to sleeping with chicks. Remember about 2 years ago on this channel, I reviewed a book by Jenks, best known for her series of You Are a Badass books, all about how we should manifest abundance and money into the universe or some dumb bullshit like that, and how one of her lesser known books was a book from 2005 called The Straight Girl's Guide to Sleeping with Chicks, which was all about how if you're a woman and you like having sex with other women and dating other women and moving in with your girlfriend and all of that, it's totally fine. You can still be straight. Like, it's watch that video if you haven't seen it yet. Anyway, I needed about 2 years to recover from that book, but I have done so with the help of the greatest book I've ever read in my life, which is the book we are going to be reviewing today. Imogen, obviously, the newest book by Becky Albertalli. You guys probably know her. Her biggest claim to fame in young adult literature is Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda, which was adapted into the movie Love, Simon a couple years ago. She is just absolutely wonderful, and I, as a cool book reviewer on YouTube, was fortunate enough to get an advanced reader copy to review in advance. So if you're watching this video right now, that means that the book has probably just released yesterday, but I'm already here having reviewed it because I've had this book for months, and it's wonderful, and I can't wait to tell you guys all about it and unpack all the incredible things in it and tell you why you absolutely need to read this book. Let's go!
Get you some nuts!
Yeah, you effing.
Up yours, woke moralist. We'll see who cancels who.
What's up, my fellow small business supporters? I'm Savvy, and welcome back to Savvy Writes Books, the channel where we talk about books and business, where today I have another book for you guys, and it's one of my favorite types of book to review, which is LGBTQ fiction, specifically fiction with bisexual main characters. You guys know I absolutely love books like that.
Gay, totally gay.
If you're new here, though, please take a minute to subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring the notification bell because I put out new videos multiple times a week all about books and business. And while you're at it, don't forget to leave a like, or you can leave a dislike. I'm not going to tell you how to feel. I just hope that you'll engage with this video in some way. Now, I have a fun story about this book. This book inspired me so much while I was reading it that I decided I had to make a doll of Imogen, of the main character. You guys, if you've been on this channel for a while, you probably know how much I love dolls and toys, especially American Girl dolls and things like that. And I've made like custom versions of myself, custom dolls of my own book characters like Bex and Nicole from my novel 90s Kids, things like that. And when I read this book, I just had this like strong inclination where I was like, I need to make a doll of Imogen. That's how much I love her. That's how much I connect with her. I just needed to see her in physical form. So I went on eBay and I ordered some doll parts and I made a doll of her.
Nice.
Nice. Nice.
I can't show her to you now other than in photos that I'll put up on the screen because here's the fun part of the story. I actually gave the doll to Becky as a gift when I visited her in Atlanta a couple months ago. It was very cool. If you want that whole story about how I made the doll, like the process I did of that and what my road trip to Atlanta was like and what meeting Becky was like and all of that, you can see all of that on my Patreon page. Look at that segue. That is a boss babe segue if I've ever seen one. That was the best thing of all time. I'm so good at segues even though my brain is melting right now.
I am the smartest man alive!
That's okay. This video was brought to you by my Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. Names are up on the screen for all of my Patreon supporters. Check them out in the description below. You will find all of my $5 a month and up Patreon supporters who have the option to link their own website or social media page or whatever. If you are interested in joining my Patreon, you can get behind the scenes blog posts that come out once to twice per week where I talk about my own writing processes, my own process for reviewing books for making dolls, sneak peeks of my upcoming books, and most relevant to today's video, posts all about things like a road trip that I took to go meet Becky and hang out with her. Things like my process for putting together a doll of Imogen, the main character of this book. Lots of additional content specifically about this book is available on my Patreon page. So check that out if you're interested. And without further ado, let's get into this book. This book means a lot to me for a lot of reasons that I'm going to get into as I read specific excerpts of it. But just kind of the inspiration behind this story is also like a massive inspiration for me personally. So you guys may remember, I talked about my video of the Straight Girl's Guide to Sleeping with Chicks. If you want to look at videos I made in 2021, I made another video also in 2021 about Becky. This was before I knew Becky. This was back when I was just a fan of her and I thought that it was cool that she was such a successful young adult author. This was right around the time that she had been involved in some controversy because there were a ton of people on the internet saying, Becky, why are you famous for writing LGBTQ literature when you yourself are straight? You are appropriating LGBTQ identities and profiting off of a marginalized community. She got so much of this harassment that after a while, Becky was just kind of like, okay, guys, fine, I'm not straight. As it turns out, not everyone who is part of the LGBTQ demographic is publicly out about it, which is wild that people didn't realize that, considering in Love, Simon, that was like one of the major themes, which is that you shouldn't pressure people to come out before they're ready because there's a variety of reasons people might not want to yet.
Look, you don't get to decide that. I'm supposed to be the one that decides when and where and how and who knows and how I get to say it. That's supposed to be my thing.
So to me, it's just absolutely wild that people didn't even consider that when looking at Becky and her work and just jumped to like the most uncharitable interpretation of what she was doing. So I made an entire video about that. I made a video talking about how that was wrong to do to her and how putting these standards on people of you can only write about things that you've personally experienced. If you put that standard on people, all you're going to do is force people to have to talk about their personal lives and demand personal information of authors that you as a reader have no entitlement to whatsoever. And after I made that video, this is what's wild. I got an email from Becky where she was like, thank you for this video. And when I saw the email, I just assumed I was on her email list or something because I was a fan. And I was like, what? And that's how I learned that we actually independently of each other found each other. Like, we became fans of each other independently of each other. She had been watching me on YouTube and I'd been reading her books and neither of us had any idea. Like, how funny is that? I love that so much. So anyway, a beautiful friendship started there. It led her to writing the nicest inscription in the front of this book when I got it. This is like the nicest thing someone's written to me when they've signed a book for me ever. It says, "For Savvy, it can't be stated enough, you make this community better and safer for people like Imogen and me." I almost cried when I read that. Like, shout out to Becky for just being amazing. If I could describe the book Imogen, obviously, in one word, it would just be based. This book is based and bisexual visibility pilled. We're gonna talk about that in just a second. I'd also like to point out that my favorite book of all time has been An Abundance of Catherines by John Green since 2006, and this book dethroned it. This is now my favorite book of all time, so if that says anything, I had a favorite book for, how long ago was 2006? Was that 17 years ago? No way. 2000, no, yes, it was. Anyway, I'd had a favorite book for 17 years, and this book dethroned it, okay? Imogen obviously is now my favorite book instead. Dude, I feel like I'm still 17. How was I a teenager reading books 17 years ago? That doesn't make any sense.
I feel lachrymose.
Alright, time is an illusion. We're all gonna die one day. Let's get into what I loved about Imogen, obviously. Imogen, obviously, is the story of an 18-year-old girl named Imogen who is about to finish up high school. She's kind of in the spring of her senior year of high school and is getting ready to go to college. One of her lifelong friends is a year older than her and is a freshman in the college that she's planning to go to, so she goes to that school for a week to visit everybody there. One thing that Imogen has always found a little strange about herself is that literally everyone in her life is LGBTQ except her. She doesn't understand why, because it's like, yeah, LGBTQ people are the minority, but somehow all of them are my friends and I'm the only straight one. How is that possible?
We're all homos. Homo sapiens.
So Imogen's always been this overinvested ally. She goes to the Pride Club meetings. She's there for her friends and supportive of them. She has a younger sister who is, I believe, a lesbian, and she's been supportive of her. She has a best friend who is bisexual, and she's supportive of her. She's always like, yeah, I'm here to be the best ally ever. Only for Imogen to discover while she is visiting her friend there that there's this girl at college named Tessa who she feels very, very drawn to. And she's like, oh my God, am I experiencing feelings for this girl? But she has to juggle that along with like, wait, am I really This is so funny to talk about. I'll explain why in a second. She'll be like, am I really feeling things for Tessa? Or am I just queer baiting? don't even know how to describe this. So funny. Okay, because I've been in this position before. And here's the thing. Imogen is this girl who's like very shy, very reserved, very analytical. I'm the opposite of that. I am like loud and in your face and direct with people, and I flirt with everybody, and I have never been shy about that my whole life. Yet even I took until I was 24 years old to come out. But I've had friends. Like, one of my best friends is a woman who's married to another woman. And she told me like a year ago, she was like, Savvy, you inspired me to come out. And I was like, how? You've been out longer than I have. And she's like, no, because in college, you would just like make out with girls. And it was like no big deal. Like, you didn't even have to say it. And I was like, I was just a hoe, Jordan. So anyway, no, that was me all the time. I'd be like, I'm very drawn to this girl, but like not in a gay way. Like, I want to make out with her, but not in a gay way. Like, I want to have sex with her, but not in a gay way. Like, my friend and I just had sex last night, but like not in a gay way.
Say no homo.
I don't want to say no homo.
Anyone who knows me in college is gonna be like watching this, remembering all of that, like, oh my god, Savvy. One time, my senior year of college, I was in this screenwriting class, and I wrote a screenplay about this girl, and I based so much of her on me, which is cringe to do in the first place. Yes, I wrote a self-insert hipster shit thing my senior year of college. I was that bitch. We were in the writer's workshop in class, and people were like, so wait, hold up, is this character bisexual and mentally ill? And I was like, no, she's just quirky.
And you're adorable.
I'm adorable.
Yes, I was bisexual and mentally ill. Anyway, let's talk about Imogen, obviously, and all the ways that I related to this book. I'll share some stories from my personal life that reminded me of this. I'll talk about some of the ways that this book just resonates with the world we're living in today, and I think is just an amazing reflection of what Becky herself had to go through. I also like that Imogen has to go through a lot of the same things that Becky did, but she's not like a self-insert. Like, I know Becky personally. Imogen's a very different character from her. And I also think it's amazing how well Becky writes Gen Z characters. Like, it's amazing to me how much she captures it. And I'll pull out some examples of that as well. Let's just go through the book and look at some examples of my favorite parts of this. Okay, so in the book, we're going to talk about my least favorite character, who's also my favorite. Like, she's my favorite love to hate character. You ever have those characters that you, like, absolutely despise them because they're the worst? But the fact that you can bring people together over hating them is what makes this character the best. Okay, there's this girl named Gretchen in the book. And Gretchen, literally since I read this book, I've been texting Becky nonstop, like, none for Gretchen Wieners memes, because this Gretchen is such a bitch. I hate her, okay? And I know, okay, we'll have some nuance in a second. I know it's wrong to hate Gretchen, who's just an 18-year-old girl who's realizing her place in the world and whatever. Her brain's not fully developed. Gretchen bullies other people out of a place of hurt, and she's one day going to grow out of it and become a better person. Whatever, I hate her, okay? So, Imogen has a couple best friends in this book. One of her best friends is a girl named Lily, who is a year older than her, and she's going to visit at her college. Lily has been out as bisexual for about a year now. She also has another friend who's in the same grade as her, who's also a senior in high school, who's named Gretchen. Gretchen is also out as bisexual. And Imogen is like, I'm the token straight girl, I guess, because then, like, her little sister's a lesbian and, like, all this other stuff, right? So a lot of this book, starting kind of on page 47, we get a lot of instances of Imogen just kind of letting Gretchen be the authority on what is and what is not queer.
Respect my authority!
Gretchen, I feel like, is kind of a representation of shitty black and white Twitter discourse about the LGBTQ community, or I guess what Tumblr discourse was 10 years ago, what Twitter discourse was 2 years ago, and I don't know where the discourse is happening now because ever since Elon Musk bought Twitter, it's been a shit show. But regardless, it's like the internet discourse of when people are trying to police what is and what is not queer enough, the LGBTQ spaces infighting that we see every year, especially during Pride Month. Gretchen is kind of an amalgamation of all of that, so let's take a look. Alright, so Imogen says, I mean, there's Gretchen's whole unspoken recognition gaydar thing, but it's more than that. There's a certain aesthetic to queer girlhood, or maybe it's several aesthetics, but I don't fit any of them. I don't have Tessa's tomboy energy or Gretchen's pink hair or a jean jacket like the one Edith wears every day. Edith's her little sister. Even Lily in her Ringer t-shirt and gym shorts looks potentially queer. Like, she could be queer. I wouldn't even know where to begin. A bulk order of enamel pins? Some kind of hair transformation? I've never dyed my hair, and it's never been shorter than shoulder length, and I probably wear dresses and skirts more than pants. And so she continues, she's like, I'm not explaining this well. I try to put it into words, and it just sounds like a list of surface details and stereotypes. I bet I'd be laughed off campus if I said any of this out loud, or canceled, probably both. But there's gotta be some kernel of truth buried in there, right? There have to be some sort of visible markers of queerness, otherwise how would so many people know at a glance that I'm straight? I just love how much Imogen's like, I'm straight, you guys. I'm straight. Maybe it comes down to vibes or that particular sort of awkwardness straight girls sometimes get around queer girls. Gretchen actually called me out for that over the summer. The entire conversation is burned into my brain beat by beat. We were cross-legged on the floor of her bedroom, analyzing a bunch of DMs and texts she'd gotten from this girl named Ella. They'd met a few weeks earlier at one of those summer STEM enrichment programs. This book is too relatable, I can't. Gretchen couldn't decide if the texts were flirtatious, and she kept talking herself in circles about it. And since I don't have a clue what flirting looks like, I was basically just nodding along until Gretchen suddenly stopped short. Hey, can you try not to do that? When I looked up from her phone, she was blinking back tears. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hands. I'm not sure what I should stop doing, I stammered. You seriously don't see it? I shook my head. Well, just so you know, it's been pretty hard to talk with you about girls I like, and I've been feeling that way for a while now. I remember it felt like my lungs had stopped working. About girls, you're like palpably uncomfortable. You don't even make eye contact when I talk about Ella, and it's every time. Whereas with Caden, anytime it's a guy, you're all in. And she lets out a breath. And I get it. I get that you relate more when it's a guy, but my crushes on girls are real too, and they're important to me. And yeah, it's funny you get so flustered about it, but it also kind of makes me not want to share them. So there's this whole like running theme throughout it where Imogen regularly like starts to get like weirdly uncomfortable and contemplative whenever someone talks about being attracted to women, and it's because she's also attracted to women. She just hasn't realized that about herself yet. So she starts to like zone out a little bit, and then Gretchen always has the most uncharitable interpretation of anybody and always thinks that other people are trying to offend her in some way. So Gretchen will be like, oh my god, why do you zone out when I talk about women? Is it because you're homophobic?
No. The only signal that I am sending is gay, good.
Like, she doesn't even consider that maybe Imogen is going through her own thing. She just always has the worst possible interpretation of it. It gets worse from there. And it's so funny reading this because, like, I remember being a teenager who was not out of the closet and, like, now being an adult and seeing people having these fights on the internet all the time. And it's like, dude, you gotta give people some space to figure themselves out. So this is another scene of Gretchen being awful. It's when they're at a Pride Alliance meeting in their high school. And, of course, Gretchen just has the worst interpretation of everything going on. This is the first time where like Imogen hints that she might not be straight, where she like expresses that she has attraction to another woman, and Gretchen accuses her of queer baiting. She's not even like, oh, you're interested in this other woman? Are you questioning your sexual orientation? Like, none of that. Instead, she's like, stop appropriating queer girl things by saying you like women when actually you don't. She's like the gay police. It's so mean. Hey, Imogen, can I talk to you about something? It was the last full day of school before fall break, so we were all extra goofy in Pride Alliance. I remember a bunch of people were confessing their queer celebrity crushes, and I guess I thought I was supposed to weigh in. So I said I'd kiss Clea Duvall as Grandma, but I'm a cheerleader. If Clea wanted to, obviously. It was such a stupid thing to say in retrospect. Maybe I thought I sounded open-minded. I know you were trying to be problematic, Gretchen had said, and at first I thought she meant the movie itself. Or maybe the issue was me loving a movie that wasn't mine to love. She settled into a chair across the circle from me, even though everyone else had gone home at that point. It freaked me out a little bit. It's just there's this whole history with the way straight women treat queer women. Gretchen said straight women will joke about being queer or how they wish they were lesbians, that kind of thing. I guess they think we'll be flattered, but the reality is no, we'd literally rather you just understand and acknowledge your own privilege as a cishet woman. You don't have to appropriate our attraction. And I know you were kidding with the whole Clea Duvall thing, but like queer women are real. It's not a joke for us. It just really hurt to hear that. I love how Gretchen ends her sentences with question marks too. She's like, but like queer women are real. I also think this is so funny because the whole like straight women joke about how they wish they were lesbians. Dude, so when I was in college, me and one of my female best friends, we would always joke about how we wished we were lesbians so that we could date each other. And we were like, this sucks that we're straight, because if we were lesbians, we could just date each other instead of having to deal with men. And then we would like get drunk and make out and like do more than that and whatever. And we'd be like, yeah, that was fun, but it sucks that we have to be straight. Anyway, she has a girlfriend now. It's just very funny. It's like, no, these usually are not straight women, okay? The problem is I think Gretchen has read too many books like The Straight Girl's Guide to Sleeping with Chicks and thought it was real. So anyway, Imogen gets super apologetic about it because she's way too nice for her own good. I'm so sorry. I totally get it. I'm just so sorry. No, it's fine. Now you know, Gretchen had said, softening like she always does. Apologies disarm her so quickly. She always seems to expect people to put up a fight, but I never shout down an actual queer person about queer stuff. How could I? Sometimes I think about what that moment must have felt like for Gretchen, how it must feel every time a straight girl casually tries on queer attraction for clout. Like, the dramatic irony in this is so fucking good. Like, she's fully in Imogen's voice the whole time, and Imogen, you can tell, truly does not know that she is LGBTQ herself. And the way she's, like, trying to justify these things to herself feels so believable and so real. And it's so relatable to anyone who's gone through that. But you as the audience reading this, knowing that this is a female-female romance, are like, girl! Look in front of you! But also, it's so believable the way she's rationalizing it, so you can see how she doesn't know. But at the same time, like, girl! Just in terms of the writing being very believable and me just being in awe of Becky's ability to write Gen Z characters, I thought at the start of chapter 13 on page 99, there was so much just accurate encapsulation of what college is like. Because I think a lot of times people either, when they do college, they kind of go the dark academia route, which there is a dark academia party in this book that we'll talk about. It's very fun. But they either do that or they treat it like it's something very serious.
Toga, 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 toga.
My freshman year of college was me just being a fucking meme the whole year. I was just a meme lord all year long. And that's how these characters are. They form these new college friendships. They act like big memes, and that's all they do. And I love that for them. So she meets these new kids in college. She meets her friend Lily's roommates and friends. There's this girl named Kayla. There's this guy named Declan. And then there's Tessa, the cute lesbian that Imogen ends up falling in love with.
Because I'm in lesbians with you.
But here's one, like, just side quest they have in college real quick. Kayla lays out the mission in urgent hushed tones. He just left for the painting studios, she says, and Lily's friend Clara lives on this hall. She's going to let us in so we don't have to try to figure out the tunnels, which is great because I don't fuck around underground. That's actually my favorite Dr. Seuss book, says Tessa. I don't fuck around underground. I don't fuck around underground, said the Hound, I add. Lily looks up from her phone and blinks, shaking her head. Page 1, Tessa says, I know this might astound, but I'm kind of tightly wound, and thus I don't fuck around in the depths of underground, said the Hound, because fucking around underground, the Hound expounded, is bound to make a sound. So whenever y'all are done with whatever the fuck that was, Kayla says, I just thought that was a perfect scene showing how college friends interact. That's how college freshmen interact with each other. That's how I did. I just thought that was perfect. You got in the moments. And then the whole mission they're doing is about how Kayla and Declan, these two kids in college, they have this sausage that they try to make the other person have, and then whenever they find the sausage, they try to go hide it in the other person's room. It's just like a prank they constantly play on each other, and they're regularly coming up with plans to try to sneak the sausage into the other person's room. Why? Because it's funny, and that's what you do when you're a college freshman. I love it. I just love it. So later, once Imogen has gotten to know Lily's college friends, and she's been talking about Tessa, because she's very into Tessa, but doesn't know that she's queer yet, right? But she's been texting her friend Gretchen, who's not there with her, being like, dude, Tessa, she's cute, right? And she sends Gretchen pictures, and now Gretchen's falling in love with Tessa, and Gretchen thinks she has a shot, because even though she's never met Tessa before, in her mind, Imogen's straight, so she's like, well, Imogen's not gonna date Tessa, so I definitely can. Not true. Gretchen, you stay the fuck away from Tessa, okay? Anyway, so Gretchen's texting Imogen, and she texts her about how Tessa's hot and puts a little scissor emoji in there. And here's what happens next. I can't explain why that scissor emoji makes me so jumpy. I know that Gretchen's just teasing, obviously, but I feel so weird about it. Why do I feel so weird about it? It couldn't be lesbophobia, right? That wouldn't even make sense. My two best friends are queer women. I have a gay little sister. But that's what every bigot says, right? Queer-phobic me, but I have a queer friend. I reread Gretchen's text, feeling strangely out of orbit. The thought of her and Tessa kissing really makes my brain short circuit. And in the rain? Sorry, but what kind of rain would be romantic to kiss in? I get that it looks cool in movies, but in real life, you'd be clammy and cold and your socks would soak through, and you'd probably just be worried the whole time about your phone getting wet. Unless you're so desperate to kiss this particular person, you don't even notice the discomfort, or you do, but it's worth it. I guess that's the whole point. So this is where Imogen's mind goes when Gretchen sends her these texts about how she's into Tessa and wants to kiss her and sends her a scissor emoji. And then Imogen's like, oh my god, why does this make me uncomfortable? It can't possibly be that I'm jealous because I also like Tessa. It must be that I'm being homophobic, right? Like, this has to be homophobia, and just because my best friends are gay doesn't mean I can't be homophobic. So, like, maybe I'm being homophobic, and it's like, no, girl, you're being gay.
Gay, totally gay.
But I love seeing her mind go through that cycle. Okay, so they eventually, in their college, they're gonna have this dark academia themed party. And Imogen decides to go to the thrift shop with her friends to go shop for outfits for it to help them pick out outfits. So they're at the thrift shop, and I just love the scenes that unfold at the thrift shop here. So page 127, Lily points out a display of accessories in the back corner before circling back to a rack of dresses. Okay, some of these dresses are actually cute. Immy, you should try this stuff on. She runs her fingertip down one of the zippers. What's the optimal skirt length? Are we talking Christian mommy blogger? Spicy Christian mommy blogger? Amelia Cardoso, ma'am, what kind of porn are you watching? Asks Kayla. So I was like, that's gonna be my new aesthetic. I want to be spicy Christian mommy vlogger. Okay, and page 129, this is still, they're in the thrift shop. Imogen has this problem where because she's so agreeable all the time and because she's just so reserved and just nice to everybody about everything and kind of a pushover, whenever someone says something, she's just like, oh, sorry. She's like, always thinks she's in the wrong about something. So page 129, Lily's trying on an outfit and she wants Imogen to see it, but Imogen's not done putting on her outfit yet. So she's like, hello, reporting for outfit feedback duty. Lily's voice just outside the fitting room. I shove my phone into my bag forcefully. I half expected to split the fabric. Almost done, sorry. So she apologizes again, right? And here's how Lily responds to that. She says, Immy, if you make me quote a Rachel Hollis book title at you, I swear to God. So obviously that's a reference to Girl Stop Apologizing. So I was reading this book on an Amtrak train to New Orleans, and I was on the train waiting for some phone service so that I could take a photo of that and text it to Becky and say, Becky, did you write this line just for me? So when I finally got that text sent, I got a text back from her and she was like, yes, I wrote that line just for you. Like, she actually did. She was like, actually, yes, I did. And I was so happy. That line, guys, that line exists in this book for me. That was written in there for me personally. I will never get over that. Here's another quick fun fact before we continue. Imogen and I are canonically fans of each other. So on Becky's Instagram, she's been posting promotional art for Imogen, obviously. And some of the art that she's been posting is her drawings of Imogen's room and what's in it. And she will tag other authors. Like if there's books drawn on Imogen's bookshelf, she'll tag the authors that wrote those books or whatever. So she has a Your Morning Guru mug. If you guys don't know, Your Morning Guru is my live streaming channel. It's kind of like a morning podcast type of show. And Imogen canonically watches it. It doesn't say so in the book, but according to Becky's Instagram promotions of this book, Imogen has our mug merch in her room. So Imogen watches me on YouTube canonically, and I read a book about her and I like her. So a fictional character and I are canonically fans of each other. That is the coolest thing I've ever experienced. Shout out to Imogen. No wonder I made a doll of her. Anyway, so Imogen's friend quotes Rachel Hollis literally just for me. Love it. So then we get to chapter 21. Imogen, she has these moments of reflection where she remembers girls that she's been attracted to throughout her life and always kind of wrote it off as like, I can't be gay, so I wasn't really into them, which is such a relatable thing. I'll share some similar experiences I've had. All right. I used to get a little hung up on certain girls when I was younger. Not always, just sometimes, especially if I found out they were queer. It's hard to explain, and it definitely wasn't something I talked about. I guess I could never find a way to describe the feeling without it sounding like a crush, but it wasn't anything like my actual crushes on boys. It wasn't that thunderstorm of feeling, electric, all-consuming, blaringly loud in my head. With girls, it was more like that feeling you get when you finish a book and your brain can't quite shake it. Like when this girl, Nisha Katoon from the track team, started coming to Pride Alliance meetings. She sat next to me in the welcome circle her first day, and I remember how weirdly suspenseful it was, wondering if she'd say her labels when she introduced herself. But that was it. Not that I wanted to date her. She just had this sort of tomboyish confidence and the easy laugh that made me want to be her friend. And I guess I kind of understood that if I were queer, I'd probably be attracted to her, just like with Tessa. There was this one girl that used to come into the Seneca Farms when Lily and I worked there. She was white with a curly bleached pixie cut, and I never learned her name. Can her name be Savvy? Because I'm white with a curly bleached pixie cut. Can I be her? Anyway, I've decided that girl's name is Savvy because she looks like me canonically. Maybe that's why Imogen started watching me on YouTube, because I look like the girl that she thought was cute when she was at the ice cream shop. Anyway, I just had so many experiences like this. I remember being in high school and I would like see some girl and be like, I think this girl's a lesbian. Like I had this one friend in high school where I just always thought she was a lesbian. I don't even think she was, but in my mind she was a lesbian. I was like, this girl just has the biggest lesbian vibes. So like sometimes when we'd be doing stuff, like we were in all the same activities together in high school. So like if I was hanging out with her, I would be like, I think maybe she's into me. If I like hung out with her and we flirted a little bit, I wouldn't want to flirt with her too much because like I'm straight, so I don't want to let her down. Like I had this whole whole made up thing in my head where I'm looking back and I'm like, it was me, I was the gay one. Okay, so there's this whole side plot as well. When Lily first goes to college, she wants to fit in well with her new queer friends, but Lily has never had a relationship with somebody before, so she's noticing like a lot of her friends have like ex-girlfriends and stuff, so she wants to fit in. But when she has like pictures of her and Imogen being best friends throughout their life, somebody's like, oh, is that your ex-girlfriend? And she's just like, yeah! So when Imogen comes to visit, Lily's like, hey, I don't mean to be weird, but you kind of have to keep up the lie that you're my ex-girlfriend. So the whole time Imogen's feeling guilty about this because not only is she feeling like she's lying and taking on a fake queer identity, but at the same time she's also falling in love with this girl who's friends with Lily who thinks she's her ex-girlfriend. It's like the whole dramatic plot. I love it. So anyway, Imogen's getting ready to leave for the weekend and say goodbye to Lily, and she says, I'm a culturally appropriating piece of trash, in fact, just your run-of-the-mill hetero egomaniac dabbling in some good old-fashioned telepathic queer baiting. It's like I'm incapable of being normal around queer women. I'm problematic, I say louder than a whisper. She laughs. Why are you problematic? I don't know, I pause, hand stalling on the door handle of Lily's Toyota Camry. She pushes the button to open it and I take the passenger seat. I just feel like I maybe overstepped a little this weekend. She tilts her head toward me. How so? Maybe overstepped isn't the word. I just feel like I was centering myself in queer spaces under false pretenses. I don't know if that makes sense. Imogen! Lily grips the steering wheel, staring for a second at the dashboard, then she blinks, buckles her seatbelt, and turns the car on. That's... okay, I know you're being sincere, not trying to invalidate your feelings, but centering yourself in queer spaces like what, my room? I shake my head. Metaphorical spaces. And then Lily says, also, in what universe are you responsible for the false pretenses here? I literally roped you into this, except not actually literally because there were no literal ropes involved. She glances up at the rear view and out the back windshield, pulling out of the parking space at a snail's pace. It's complicated though, but it's really not. I have a dorm room and I invited you to stay there. She shrugs, shifting out of reverse. And guess what? I'll do it again. Okay then, I laugh. Lily's quiet for a moment, but just as we're about to exit the student lot, she shoots me a quick sideways glance. Hey, you know you're always welcome here, right? Anytime. Open invitation. I don't give a single shit how problematic you think you are. So I just feel bad that, like, I think Imogen has been subject to too much of Gretchen's over-analyzing of queer discourse constantly because she's over here like, oh my god, did I center myself in queer spaces? Like, who uses that language in everyday life? That's the language that people use on the internet. But the problem is that she's been around Gretchen too long and Gretchen's been like, oh my god, Imogen, stop pretending that you're attracted to women and stop centering yourself in queer spaces. Here's one more example of Gretchen being awful and Gretchen, I don't know, inundating Imogen with too much of this like over-analysis of everyone's every single move instead of just giving her the space to figure herself out. All right, so it's from chapter 32, page 217. Imogen's having this flashback. She's remembering this Pride Alliance meeting that she was in with Gretchen. There had been a new Pride member that day, a junior named Dallas, who had declined to give labels or pronouns. Gretchen found the whole thing discomforting. Like, I'm torn, she said, because on the one hand, no one should have to share that, but on the other hand, I felt a little unsafe, and I think that's worth acknowledging. Unsafe? Lily had asked, sliding onto the bench beside me. Gretchen nodded. I feel like even having one cishet person there really changes the vibe. There's just this extra potential for judgment and scrutiny. Not you, Immy, you know that. So she's like, Imogen, not you. You're one of the good straight people, okay? But like, if there's other straight people, like, I don't feel safe. But how do you know they're cishet? Asked Lily. Well, that's what's tricky about it. They could totally be closeted, which is why I would never, like, kick anyone out or question their right to be there. Lily's eyes narrowed. But you are questioning their right to be there. No, I'm literally discussing my lived experience. Sorry. I shouldn't be laughing this hard at it. Oh my god. No, I'm literally discussing my lived experience as a queer person in a queer space. So basically Lily's like, Gretchen, this person didn't give their pronouns or didn't say what sexual orientation they are at the Pride meeting because they didn't want to. And some people are closeted, so maybe don't pressure them. And Gretchen's over here like, yeah, but like, what if they're straight? What if they're a straight person who's invading our queer space? Because Gretchen, once again, she just has the most uncharitable interpretation of literally everything, and she just assumes malice on everyone's part. And I think that's very common. And I would like to say, just to be clear, it's made very clear in this book that Gretchen's doing this from a place of hurt, which is, I think, where it often comes from, right? You see examples in this book of Gretchen experiencing homophobia. Gretchen, because she does try to look visibly queer, whatever that means, if we're going to look at stereotypes, she is publicly out, and she does publicly date women and things like that. And you see examples of women discriminating against her or bullying her for being queer and things like that. And because of that, Gretchen has her guard up all the time. When she first moves to this school with them, you hear her backstory about how at her other school, there were too many, straight guys who would come to the gay pride meetings just to bully people and just to make fun of people who had no interest in actually being an ally to anyone. And because of that, Gretchen kind of always has her guard up, and she's always worried that somebody's going to, secretly be sneaking into these meetings just to get information on people and bully them, because that kind of stuff does happen, and it's very sad. There are terrible homophobic people in the world, and Gretchen's unfortunately had to deal with a lot of them, and because of that, she kind of projects those fears onto other people, but she ends up hurting queer people in the process. And I think that's a thing we see often in real life, so I'm glad that Becky explored that character with that level of complexity, and we did get to see her full backstory in that way to understand why she feels this way. But also, I can't help laughing at the way she says some of this stuff, just because it's like so spot on. It's so spot on. So then Gretchen continues, I guess I just find it kind of unfair that the onus is on queer people to come out and share our labels. Allo cishet people don't have to because they're the default. So it just becomes this whole self-perpetuating dynamic that protects allo cishets from having to declare their positionality, which makes queer people even more vulnerable. Right. But how do you know who's allo cishet? You don't, Lily said. I get that. Okay, but do you? Because it sounds like you're talking about a specific person who showed up to a pride meeting and very pointedly didn't label themselves. You're really reading that as allo cishet. I mean, Dallas clearly doesn't want to be called queer, Gretchen said. So don't call them queer, but don't act like they don't belong there. I didn't. I offered them donuts, Imogen, didn't I? I look up with the start. Yes, you did. Like, this is literally me just talking about my own safety in a designated queer space. But why would you assume bad faith? Lily insisted. So then it goes on, and Gretchen kind of tells the story of how she's assuming bad faith because at her old school, their Pride Alliance group had fallen apart because there were people that were just showing up to bully people, and she's kind of has her guard up now. So we see that Gretchen has that trauma and she's coming at it from a place of hurt, but at the same time, Lily's like, okay, but that doesn't mean you get to police other people or try to determine from the outside who's queer and who isn't. I kind of experienced this myself. So if we want to look at Savvy from the years of 2019 to 2021, this is when I was like 26 to 28 years old. During that time, I had a very long period of questioning whether I was non-binary or trans or something, and I'm not. But I've talked a little bit about it before. I know for a fact now that I'm not. Some people question it and realize that they're not. I'm one of those people. But it always made me very uncomfortable when people would talk about like, oh, you have to share your pronouns and how you identify and things like that, because for me, I was like, oh, I don't know what to do right now because I have very bad OCD, especially about lying. And if I know that like if I were to say something that I didn't feel was true, then I would feel like I was lying and that would stress me out. But if I didn't, I'd feel like I'd have to out myself and be like, oh, I'm actually questioning right now, which like I didn't want to have to do that. As it turns out, I'm a cisgender woman, so maybe I shouldn't be centering myself in this space. But my point is, like, it's tough. It's not as black and white as people want to make it out to be, right? So we're going to page 243 now, which I think is one of the most interesting discussions in this book. If you guys remember the specific situation that happened to Becky that she's kind of reliving, she kind of inserts a situation similar to that, but it's also very similar to another situation that we saw happen very recently. So we're going to talk about this. Gretchen's the worst during it, as usual. Imogen and Ottavio, who is Lily's younger brother, and Imogen's little sister Edith and Gretchen, they're all hanging out, right? They're all hanging out, and Edith excitedly runs in the room because something cool just happened. She says, guess what, guess what? Kara Clapstone came out. I laugh. Gretchen, why are you wearing a trash bag? It's a paint poncho. Who's Kara Clapstone? Ottavio asks. An actress. She played the nerdy girl in Shop Talk, and she's about to be in that Coven show. Here, you'll recognize her. Cool, so she's queer? Yep, bisexual. Edith grabs a roller, so they're painting the room together. And there's this fictional show in this universe called Shop Talk that Gretchen doesn't watch because she's like, Shop Talk is a show for straight people, but it has queer characters, but it's really for straight people because, again, Gretchen's the gay police. So then Edith's like, Gretchen, you still think Shop Talk's for straight people? And Gretchen says, oh, 100%. It's not about Kara. It's about the straight gays. There are straight gays? Ottavio looks bewildered. Gretchen laughs. Gays like gays. It's made for straight audiences. Right, of course, Edith says. This movie about queer girls, written and directed by two queer women, starring a queer woman, is for straight audiences. I think this is kind of like a reference to how when the movie Love, Simon came out, a lot of people were like, this movie says it's a LGBTQ movie, but it's really for straight people. Like, what does that even mean? Like, no, it's not. And people are like, it was directed by someone who was gay. The author of the book that is based on, Becky, is bisexual. There are multiple, like, queer actors. Like, what do you mean that that it's a movie for straight people? It's literally about LGBTQ characters. I will say one thing I didn't like in the movie was that they erased Leah's bisexual identity. Now, I will say that in Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, you don't know yet that Leah is bi. She doesn't come out until the second book. So I guess in the movie they didn't address that at all. But they made Leah say I'm straight at one point, but she was saying it in Simon's head montage. So like maybe that's just because that's what he thought. I don't know. My point is like, let Leah be bi. Anyway, let's continue. So then Gretchen's like, don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled for Kara, and it definitely helps. Edith tilts her head. Helps what? I don't know, the general optics, I guess? Obviously, having a straight lead actress was kind of an iffy choice. But she wasn't straight, Edith says. Sure, but she says she was, and sapphic representation is already so rare in Hollywood. So I can see why people would want those roles to go to actual queer people. It's about equity and authenticity. How is Kara not an actual queer person? Edith's voice comes out sharp. She is, of course she is. I'm just saying I get where the Kara discourse is coming from. I press my thumb to my lips. The Kara discourse? I guess it's more like people rehashing some of the earlier discourse, says Gretchen. Like there were queer people who critiqued Kara's casting when they first announced it. Now everyone's turning on them and saying they pressured her out of the closet. I mean, they kind of did, Edith says. I think they expressed valid frustration. It was a mainstream gay movie. Obviously, there's going to be backlash when people see yet another queer role go to a straight woman. What did she think would happen? Gretchen tugs at the end of her paint poncho. It just sucks because now people are using it as a gotcha moment. Like, people should have somehow known not to criticize her work because she'd eventually turn out to be bi. But it's not about criticism of her work. Edith sets her roller on the paint tray. They're mad that she said she was straight. Right, and now they're tripping over themselves to find reasons to still be pissed about it. We've already got Twitter randos questioning her motivations for coming out. Oh, she's just saying she's bi to get out of valid criticism. Oh, she's doing it to get more press for the Coven show. Can't we just be happy for her? Plus the shit she's getting from other actors. You know the girl who played the gay trombone player in that Battle of the Bands movie? Jeanette James? Yeah, so like 5 seconds after Kara's announcement goes live, Jeanette drops this shady Instagram post about how straight passing bisexuals love to tweet about how queer they are from their boyfriend's bed. And then she dirty deleted, but seriously, let the woman live. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting that the woman's name was Kara Clapstone because her initials are KC, which are the same initials as Kit Connor. If you guys remember, I did a video about this a couple months ago when the same fucking thing that happened to Becky happened to Kit Connor, who's one of the leads in the Netflix adaptation of Heartstopper, which is a series of graphic novels about LGBTQ characters. I have a tattoo from it. I love it very, very much. By the way, in the comments below, real quick side note, in the comments below, if you like this book, tell me what quote from it or what thing from it you think I should get as a tattoo. I'm still trying to decide. I want a tattoo from this book specifically, and I'm not sure what tattoo I'm going to get yet exactly. So let me know in the comments below what you think would be a good tattoo from this book. But anyway, I thought it was really interesting that this actress has the same initials as Kit Connor, because I think maybe it was like a nod to that, because that's what happened to him, right? Kit Connor plays a bisexual character on the show Heartstopper, and a lot of people were like, but he was seen having, like, being out with a girl, so what if he's straight? And it's like, well, his character on the show is bisexual, and he could theoretically be dating a girl and still be bisexual, because if you're bisexual, you're not just into one gender, right? But people were like, oh, but what if he's straight? It's like, that's not your business, dude. That's not your business. Let him live his life. So I think it was kind of a nod to that a little bit. I liked that reference in there. Good job, Becky. I also liked this part on page 308. This is where they're getting ready for the Dark Academia party, and Imogen puts on her cool outfit. She has this like old-fashioned dress on, and Lily says, love it. You look like a Samantha doll. I also texted Becky saying, did you write that line for me? And she said no. So since she said no to that one, I know that she was serious when she said she wrote the Rachel Hollis line for me. She didn't write the Samantha doll line for me. She was like, I actually just like American Girl dolls. And I was like, Becky, that is great to hear. I didn't tell her why, because I didn't yet tell her that I was giving her the Imogen doll that I made. But that was a lovely surprise. I was like, that works out very well for both of us, doesn't it? When Imogen and Tessa are like having a conversation together, like a little flirty conversation, I just like the writing here. This has nothing to do with queer discourse. I just like the writing here. She lets out a quick, breathless laugh. Oh my god, you know that part in The Lion King where they're having sex in the forest? People had sex in The Lion King? No, lions had sex in The Lion King. Some of the writing in this just made me lose my fucking mind. I could not get over how good it was. Anyway, you guys, I went on a lot longer than I meant to with this, but Imogen, obviously, I think was one of the greatest books ever written. The writing is so good. There's so many parts that are literally like laugh out loud funny when I could not stop laughing. This was the kind of book that I was reading on a train and literally taking photos of pages and texting them to my friends, being like, read this! Read how good this is! So I highly, highly recommend that everybody read this book if you haven't already. It's one of my favorites, if not my favorite book of all time. It's just so fantastic. It definitely brought back a lot of memories of me not being out yet and not even fully sure that I was queer yet when the signs were so incredibly obvious to me. You don't have to break down bisexuality by percentages, but I'd say it splits about 60-40 in favor of women. I'd say I'm attracted to women more often, but like somehow I just like, I didn't grasp it. I was like, yeah, everybody likes women though. Like, yeah, I just like women the same amount that everybody likes women. Like in my mind, just everybody liked women, which is also not true. But anyway, that's kind of the specific experience that this book details. I think it is so important. I think it is such a good book, and especially in today's day and age with a lot of stuff going on the internet with people pressuring other people to be out about their identities or trying to police what being truly queer looks like and things like that, where we see a lot of LGBTQ infighting, which is an extremely sad thing to see right now, especially in a time when we should be fighting together for our rights. You know, we should be banding together because there is a lot of anti-LGBTQ legislation being introduced all the time. There's lots of new attacks on the LGBTQ community all the time. So we really should be sticking together. And I think this book provides just some excellent examples of how being LGBTQ doesn't just have one look to it. It's not just one experience that everyone feels the same way. There's many different ways that people come to fully understand themselves, and it's just a very sweet story. So, highly recommend Imogen, obviously. Let me know in the comments below what tattoo I should get from this book. Other than that, I will see you guys again on Friday for another video, but in the meantime, please continue supporting small businesses and send love to my girl Becky. Bye!
Get you some nuts.
Yeah, you effing.
Up yours, woke moralist. We'll see who cancels who.